The smell of salt water still clung to Ade's clothes as he stepped off the rickety car that had carried him from Lagos to his hometown. His legs trembled, not just from the long journey, but from the weight of 12 years of sacrifice, expectation, and longing. For over a decade, Ade had endured scorching deserts, stormy seas, and unforgiving labor in foreign lands, all for one purpose: to give his family a better life. He had left Nigeria a young man of 20-0 NE, with little more than a backpack and a dream. The road had been brutal. He remembered vividly the days he went hungry, working menial jobs just to survive. He passed through the desert for 3 months before he joined a boat that took him across the Mediterranean Sea. The risk was high, but he had to because no hope was left back home. He worked so hard in Italy. He did several kind of jobs just to survive after he left the refuge camp. There were nights he slept under bridges, shivering in the cold, whispering his mother's prayers to himself like a protective charm. But he persevered. He worked in construction sites, washed dishes in restaurants, even loaded cargo at the docks. And slowly, the money began to add up. Every coin he saved, every sacrifice he made, had one destination home: his mother, his family. As he drove along the dusty road that led to the village, he clutched a small leather bag close to his chest. Inside it was the last of his savings, not much compared to what he had sent over the years, but enough to start afresh if need be. His heart swelled with anticipation as he imagined the surprise on his mother's face when he showed her the plans he had drawn, the money he had carefully sent to his younger brothers for the house they were supposed to build. He pictured her smile, her tired hands finally resting in comfort, her old hut replaced by a modest but decent home. The sound of children playing in the distance grew louder. Ade slowed his pace, his eyes scanning the familiar sights of the village. The baobab tree still stood at the entrance, towering like a sentinel over the land. The women still gathered by the stream, their laughter mingling with the splash of water as they washed clothes. Some faces were familiar, others new, but all turned to look at the weary traveler making his way home. "Is that not Ade? Ade, the son of Mama Kike?" one of the women exclaimed, dropping her cloth in surprise. "Yes, it is him," another shouted. "After all these years, he has returned." Children abandoned their play to run beside him, chanting his name. "Ade is back! Ade is back!" The chorus followed him down the narrow path, stirring a mix of pride and humility in his chest. He had imagined this welcome many times during his years abroad. He had thought of it on lonely nights when despair threatened to swallow him whole. It was sweeter than he had dreamed, and yet, beneath the joy, something felt off. As Ade turned the final bend toward his family's compound, his steps faltered. The image that met his eyes was not the neat, plastered house he had imagined. Instead, standing before him was the same weather-beaten shack he had left behind 12 years ago, only now it looked worse. The roof sagged, patched with rusty zinc sheets and torn plastic. The mud walls were cracked and crumbling, the wooden door barely clinging to its hinges. Weeds had grown tall around the compound, a silent testimony to neglect. Ade's heart sank. "No, this cannot be," he whispered, his voice trembling. The children's chant faded as they scattered, leaving him alone before the shack. Slowly, he pushed open the fragile door. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of dampness and smoke. A figure sat on a low stool by the hearth, his mother. Her back was bent, her wrapper faded, her once vibrant face now lined with years of struggle. She lifted her head at the sound of the door and froze. "My son," she breathed, her voice breaking as her eyes filled with tears. She rose unsteadily, her hands shaking as she reached for him. "Ade, my son, you have come home." Ade dropped his bag and rushed forward, catching her in his arms. For a long moment, neither spoke. They simply held each other, their tears mingling, their bodies trembling with relief. But as Ade pulled back, his eyes scanned the room, the broken mat on the floor, the empty pots stacked against the wall, the leaking roof that let in streaks of sunlight. His joy turned to confusion, then anger. "Mama, what is this? Where is the house? The money I sent, where is it?" His voice cracked, his chest tightening as he spoke. Mama Kike's eyes clouded with sorrow. She lowered herself back onto the stool and shook her head. "My son, I warned them. I begged them to use the money wisely. But your brothers, they did not listen." Ade's blood ran cold. "What do you mean they did not listen? I sent money for a house, for comfort, for you. For 12 years I labored 12 years. Where is the house?" Just then, laughter and loud voices drifted from outside. Ade turned to see two men staggering into the compound, bottles of palm wine in their hands. They were his younger brothers, Jide and Kunnal, both now grown men. Their clothes were dirty, their eyes bleary, but they froze when they saw him standing there. "Ade," Jide muttered, his face paling. "Brother," Kunnal added, trying to smile, but the guilt in his eyes betrayed him. Ade's fists clenched. He took a step toward them, his voice low but seething. "Tell me it is not true. Tell me you did not squander 12 years of my sweat on drinks and women while Mama lived like this." The brothers exchanged glances, their bravado fading. Jide looked at the ground while Kunnal stammered. "Brother, we thought you would not come back. We tried." "Enough!" Ade roared, his voice echoing through the compound. His chest heaved, his vision blurred with fury. "Do you know what I went through? Do you know how many nights I went hungry, how many days I labored under the sun, all for you? And this is what you have done. You let Mama suffer while you wasted everything." His mother rose again, tears streaming down her face. "Ade, my son, please, anger will not change what has been done. Your brothers were foolish, yes, but they are still your blood. Do not let bitterness consume you." Ade's shoulders slumped, his rage battling with despair. He looked around the dilapidated room, then at his mother's frail frame. The weight of betrayal pressed down on him, crushing the joy he had carried home. His dream of returning as a provider, a hero, had crumbled into dust. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the pain, a spark flickered. He would not let this be the end of his story. He would not allow his years of sacrifice to be wasted. Not by foolish brothers, not by disappointment, not even by betrayal. As night fell and the compound grew quiet, Ade sat alone under the baobab tree. The moon bathed the village in silver light, and his thoughts churned like restless waves. His heart was broken, but his resolve began to harden. He had returned with nothing but the last of his savings and his will to fight. And fight he would. Tomorrow, he decided, would mark the beginning of a new chapter. Hello guys, I hope you enjoy our story about Ade's betrayal by his blood brothers. Please take the time to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications to stay updated on our stories. Ade woke before dawn, the call of a rooster piercing through the silence of the village. He had barely slept. His mind was restless, replaying the scene of his brothers stumbling into the compound with palm wine bottles in hand, their guilt written all over their faces. His chest tightened each time he thought of his mother's cracked walls, her frail body, and the truth she had been forced to carry in silence. For 12 long years, he had lived with one picture in his heart: a neat cement house with a painted veranda, his mother sitting there with pride, neighbors greeting her as the mother of Ade, the successful son. That dream had kept him alive when hunger gnawed at his belly and cold winds cut through his skin. It had been his anchor in storms. Now that anchor was gone, replaced by the sinking weight of betrayal. He stepped out into the cool morning air, staring at the compound. Dew clung to the weeds that had grown tall around the shack, shimmering faintly in the dim light. A few goats bleated nearby. The village was waking up, but inside him the heaviness grew. His mother emerged from the shack with a small pot balanced on her head. "I am going to fetch water," she said softly, her voice heavy with concern. She studied her son's face, etched with disappointment. "Ade, my son, anger will eat you alive if you let it. Do not let their foolishness destroy you. You still have life, and where there is life, there is hope." Ade nodded faintly, though her words barely touched the storm within him. "Mama, I trusted them," he whispered. "Every coin I sent, I thought of you. I thought of home. And now look," he gestured at the shack. "All wasted." Mama Kike sighed, her eyes misting with sorrow. "Yes, they wasted much. But you are here now. That is enough for me. You are alive, and that is more precious than gold." Her words lingered as she walked away, but they did little to soothe him. Ade knew he could not rest until he faced his brothers properly. Later that morning, Jide and Kunnal stumbled out of their small hut, still nursing the remnants of last night's palm wine. They tried to avoid Ade's gaze, but he was waiting for them under the baobab tree. "Sit down," he ordered, his voice sharp, his eyes unyielding. They obeyed, casting nervous glances at each other. Ade leaned forward, his face stern. 12 years, brothers. 12 years I labored in lands that were not my own. I broke my body so you could build a life here. I sent money more than enough to raise a house, to give Mama comfort. Tell me, what did you do with it?" Silence. Jide shifted uncomfortably, staring at the ground. Kunnal cleared his throat, but no words came. "Answer me," Ade thundered, slamming his palm against the trunk of the tree. Birds scattered from the branches above. Finally, Jide spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Brother, we made mistakes. We thought you would not return so soon. We spent the money foolishly. On what? Ade pressed, his voice laced with venom. Kunnel's lips trembled. Women drinks parties. We thought more money would keep coming. We did not plan. Ade stared at them in disbelief, his anger boiling. Do you hear yourselves? You let Mama live in that broken shack while you chased after women and palm wine? You squandered 12 years of blood and sweat as if it were nothing. Jide lifted his head, guilt etched on his face. We were young, brother. We did not understand. Enough! Ade cut him off, his voice trembling with rage. Do not insult me with excuses. You were not children. You knew exactly what you were doing. Tears pricked his eyes, though he fought to hold them back. He turned away, his chest heaving. The pain of betrayal was worse than hunger, worse than any hardship he had faced abroad. Hunger had sharpened his will, storms had tested his strength, but betrayal by family struck at the very core of his being. The villagers soon caught wind of what had happened. By midday, whispers floated through the market and along the dusty paths. Did you hear? Ade's brothers squandered his money. Imagine, all those years he suffered abroad, and they wasted it on drinks. Shameful. Very shameful. The shame spread like wildfire, burning Jide and Kunnel with every mocking glance, every whispered insult. That evening, Ade sat with his mother on the veranda of the shack. The air was heavy, the sky streaked with crimson as the sun sank behind the hills. Mama Kike reached for his hand. My son, she said softly, I know your heart is broken, but you must not drown in this pain. Your brothers have made their choices. Do not let their foolishness chain you. You are stronger than this. Ade shook his head. Mama, I feel like everything I worked for is gone. What is left of me now? His mother smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. What is left of you? Ade, you are still here. You are alive. And as long as breath is in your body, you can begin again. You did not come home empty. You came home with wisdom, with strength, with resilience. Do not let bitterness steal that from you. Her words pierced through his despair, settling deep within him. He sat in silence, watching the night descend, her voice echoing in his heart. Perhaps he had been wrong to think his dream had died. Perhaps, even out of betrayal, something new could be born. As stars filled the sky, Ade made a silent vow. He would rise again. He would rebuild not for his brothers, not even for the villagers, but for his mother, and for himself. The dream was not dead. It only needed to be reborn. The days that followed Ade's return were heavy and slow. Each morning, as the sun climbed over the hills, he felt the weight of 12 wasted years pressing harder on his shoulders. He walked through the village streets with his head bowed, not because of shame of his own making, but because of the whispers that clung to him like shadows. Ade came back to nothing, some said. His brothers finished all his money, others added. After all his suffering abroad, see how they treated him. It was the kind of gossip that spread like wildfire, and Ade felt every ember burning into his soul. He spent his mornings by the stream, sitting on a flat stone, staring at the water's slow current. The voices of the villagers echoed faintly behind him, but he tried to drown them out with memories. He thought of nights on the cargo ship, his body aching as he loaded goods for pennies. He thought of the construction site where he had nearly lost a finger, only to return to work the next day because he needed the money. He thought of the cold winters when his breath turned to mist and his stomach growled with hunger. And through it all, he remembered the image that had kept him alive, his mother smiling in front of a new home, her eyes shining with gratitude, the village looking on with respect. That image had been his lifeline, and now it was shattered. One evening, as Ade sat outside the shack, his mother joined him with a bowl of roasted maize. She pressed it into his hands gently. Eat, my son, she said. Ade looked at the maize but shook his head. Mama, I cannot eat. Each bite tastes like betrayal. Mama Kike sighed, her weathered face reflecting both pain and wisdom. Ade, my son, betrayal is a bitter fruit. But if you let it poison you, you will die with it. Swallow it, let it pass, and plant new seeds. That is the only way forward. Her words lingered in his mind long after she had gone to sleep. He lay on his mat, staring at the leaking roof, watching stars blink through the holes. Her voice echoed, plant new seeds. The next morning, Ade decided to confront his brothers one last time. He found them sitting by a palm tree outside the village, their faces drawn with worry. The mocking whispers of the villagers had already reached them, and shame had begun to eat at their pride. Jide, Kunnel, Ade called firmly, standing tall before them. They looked up, startled. Cunnel spoke first, his voice soft. "Brother, we are sorry. Truly, we did not mean to bring shame on you. We were foolish." Ade studied them, his eyes hard but no longer burning with the same fury. "Foolishness is when a man does not know better. But you knew better. You chose to waste what was not yours. You chose to let Mama suffer while you fed your greed. For that, the shame you carry now is yours alone." Jide lowered his head, tears brimming in his eyes. "We have nothing left, brother. Nothing." Ade's chest tightened. He wanted to scream at them, to curse them for stealing his years, but something inside him shifted. What good would his anger do? Would it rebuild the house? Would it heal his mother's pain? No. Anger would only eat him alive, as his mother had warned. He took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. "Listen to me. I have nothing left to only the small savings I carried home. But I will not waste my life mourning what is gone. I will start again. And when I rise, you will see what true strength looks like." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving them staring after him. That week, Ade visited the bustling market in the nearby town. He wandered among the traders, observing their goods: palm oil, yams, spices, fabrics. His eyes lingered on the stalls where brightly colored cloths hung in neat rows, their patterns vivid, their textures rich. Women gathered around them eagerly, bargaining, laughing, touching the fabrics with admiration. Something stirred in Ade. He remembered how, abroad, he had seen the value of African fabrics. Traders in faraway cities had marveled at the beauty of Ankara, at the bold designs and colors. Even in foreign lands, people paid dearly for what was made at home. This is it, he thought. This is where I will begin again. He spent hours speaking with fabric sellers, learning about prices, suppliers, and customer demands. He asked questions, observed carefully, and noted every detail. With the little savings he had, he bought a small bundle of cloth, just enough to test the waters. When he returned to the village, the people whispered again. Look at Ade, the great returnee, reduced to selling fabrics. He wanted to build a house, and now he is hawking cloth. Some laughed, others shook their heads, but Ade ignored them. Each morning, he carried his bundle to the market. He laid the fabrics out on a mat, arranging them neatly, smiling at passers-by, calling out gently to attract attention. At first, few people bought. Some doubted him, others mocked him. But Ade persisted. He greeted everyone with respect, bargained fairly, and never cheated a customer. Slowly, word began to spread. Go to Ade, people started saying. He sells good quality cloth. He is honest. By the end of the first month, Ade had doubled his stock. By the third month, he no longer sold on the ground, he rented a small stall, painting it freshly, arranging his fabrics with care. Women traveled from neighboring villages to buy from him. His name began to carry weight again, not as the betrayed son, but as a hard-working, trustworthy trader. And each evening, when he returned home with earnings in his pocket, his mother's smile grew brighter. Though her body was frail, her heart was full. You see, my son, she would say, her eyes shining. Seeds grow if you plant them with faith. But not everyone celebrated his success. Jide and Cunnel, once proud and carefree, now found themselves mocked openly in the village. Your brother builds while you wasted, people jeered. Look at you, drinking your future away. The shame became unbearable. They avoided the market, avoided gatherings, unable to stand the weight of their own choices. At night, when Ade lay awake on his mat, he thought of them. Anger still flickered in his chest, but alongside it, something softer grew: pity. They had made their bed, yes, but they were still his brothers. The road ahead would decide whether they would remain lost or find redemption. For now, Ade focused on his growing trade. The betrayal had not broken him, it had forged him. And in the silence of the night, beneath the leaking roof, he whispered a new vow: I will rise. For Mama. For myself. And for the future they tried to steal. The market was alive with sound. The cries of traders, the chatter of women bargaining, the clink of cowries and naira notes exchanging hands. Amidst the noise and bustle, Ade stood in his small stall, arranging fabrics in neat piles. The sun blazed overhead, but his face glistened not with weariness, but with determination. Each cloth he spread out carried with it more than just color and texture, it carried his new beginning. When Ade first opened his stall, people had laughed. Some called him foolish for starting small. After 12 years abroad, is this all he can do? They mocked. Others sneered. A man who could not keep his brothers in check, how will he manage a business? But Ade had learned something abroad that many here had forgotten. Ridicule does not kill, but inaction does. So he smiled at his critics and focused on his work. He greeted customers warmly, sometimes helping them carry their purchases to the roadside. He learned quickly that trust was the currency more valuable than money. If he promised a delivery, he kept it. If he gave his word on quality, he stood by it. And slowly, the tide began to turn. One morning, a woman from a nearby town came to the market looking for wedding fabrics. She had heard whispers about Ade's stall. Hesitant at first, she examined his cloth carefully, expecting to find flaws. But the fabrics were of excellent quality, and Ade's prices were fair. "I will take them," she said at last, handing him her money. Her trust became his first breakthrough. Word of mouth spread quickly. Within weeks, brides-to-be, mothers, and even chiefs began seeking him out. His stall, once quiet, now bustled with activity. The same villagers who had mocked him found themselves eating their words. At home, Ade's earnings began to change things. The first thing he did was repair the shack's leaking roof. He hired local carpenters to patch the holes, and though it was still small, the hut no longer shivered under rainfall. His mother's relief was visible in her smile. "You see, my son," she said, patting his hand, "a little seed can grow into a forest if tended well." Ade nodded, though in his heart he knew this was just the beginning. He poured most of his profits back into the business, expanding his stock. Soon, his stall overflowed with vibrant cloths, ankara, osso oak, and lace. He traveled to bigger towns to buy directly from suppliers, cutting out middlemen, securing better prices. His eye for quality sharpened, and so did his sense of opportunity. But success was not without challenges. Some competitors grew envious. One afternoon, a rival trader named Bala confronted him. "You are stealing my customers," Bala sneered. "They used to buy from me, now they flock to you." Ade stood tall, his voice calm. "I am not stealing, Bala. People come where they find honesty and quality. If you do the same, they will return to you." Bala spat on the ground. "We will see how long your luck lasts." But Ade knew it was not luck. It was sweat, patience, and integrity. Months rolled into a year, and Ade's life transformed. The shack was finally replaced by a small but decent bungalow, built with his own earnings. Its whitewashed walls gleamed in the sun, its roof strong and firm. For the first time in years, Mama Kike slept peacefully without fear of rain soaking her mat. Neighbors came to admire the house, some out of genuine joy, others with envy. But Ade's heart swelled each time he saw his mother sitting on the veranda, her face serene. "She deserves this and more," he told himself. With his profits, Ade opened a larger fabric shop in town. It was no longer just a stall in the market, but a proper store with shelves and counters. Customers from distant villages came to buy, and soon he needed extra hands to help. Ironically, it was his own brothers, Jide and Kunal, who came forward. At first, they were hesitant, too ashamed to face him. But the ridicule they suffered in the village had broken their pride. One evening, they stood before Ade's house, heads bowed. "Ade," Jide began, his voice thick with regret, "we wronged you. We squandered your sacrifice. We brought shame to Mama and to you. But we cannot undo the past. We only ask, let us work with you. Let us make ourselves useful." Kunal added, his eyes wet with tears, "We will take any job, brother. Even to sweep the shop floor. Only give us a chance." Ade studied them for a long moment, the weight of the past pressing between them. Part of him wanted to turn them away, to let them taste the full bitterness of their actions. But another part remembered his mother's words. "Betrayal is a bitter fruit, but you must not let it poison you." Finally, he said, "You will work in the shop. But understand this, you are not doing me a favor. You will earn your keep like everyone else. No laziness, no tricks. If you want redemption, you will prove it through sweat." The brothers nodded eagerly, relief flooding their faces. The villagers watched in astonishment. "The same brothers who squandered his money now serve him," they whispered. Some mocked Jide and Kunal openly as they carried bales of cloth on their backs. Others laughed at their downfall. But Ade ignored the jeers. For him, it was not about revenge, it was about responsibility, about breaking the cycle of waste. Under Ade's discipline, his brothers slowly changed. The mockery hurt them deeply, but with each passing day in the shop, they learned humility. They woke early, carried loads, managed customers, and began to understand what true labor meant. As Ade's business thrived, so did his reputation. He became known not only as a trader, but as a man of resilience. Chiefs invited him to supply fabrics for festivals. Women trusted him for their weddings. Even Bala, the envious rival, eventually came to him for advice. One evening, Ade stood outside his shop as the sun dipped below the horizon. He looked at the bustling streets, the colorful fabrics lining his shelves, his brothers working quietly inside, and his mother waiting at home in the bungalow he had built. He took a deep breath, the air filling his chest with a sense of fulfillment he had never felt before. The betrayal had nearly destroyed him, but he had risen from the ashes, stronger than ever. "This," he murmured to himself, "is just the beginning." The sound of hammers striking nails rang out across the village as builders worked tirelessly under the hot sun. Dust filled the air, mingling with the scent of fresh plaster. At the center of it all stood a modest but beautiful bungalow with white walls, polished windows, and a veranda shaded by a wide roof. Children ran around the compound, marveling at the sight. Women stopped by with buckets on their heads, shaking their heads in admiration. "This is Ade's work," one whispered. "Yes," another replied. "The same Ade whose brothers wasted everything. Look at him now." On the veranda, Mama Kike sat proudly on a wooden chair, her wrapper neatly tied, her face glowing with peace. Her frail hands, once worn from hardship, now rested on her lap with dignity. Neighbors greeted her with respect. "Good afternoon, Mama Ade. You are blessed." And indeed she was. For Ade, building this house was not just about shelter. It was about restoring dignity, for his mother, for himself, and for the name that had once been mocked. He had turned betrayal into brick and mortar, transforming shame into strength. But Ade's ambition did not stop there. His fabric shop in the nearby town had grown beyond his wildest expectations. Brightly colored cloths lined the shelves, their patterns dazzling under the light. Customers from distant towns now came to buy in bulk, some even reselling in cities. Ade's reputation for honesty and quality had spread far and wide. He reinvested every profit wisely, expanding his supply chain, hiring workers, and even learning tailoring so he could add value to the fabrics he sold. Before long, what had started as a single bundle of cloth had grown into a thriving enterprise. The shop was no longer Ade's alone. His brothers, Jide and Kunnel, worked alongside him. Though still mocked by some, they endured the ridicule and proved their sincerity through sweat and humility. Under Ade's firm guidance, they learned discipline, respect, and responsibility. Slowly, they began to rebuild their shattered reputations. One market day, a poor widow named Irene approached Ade's shop timidly. Her wrapper was old and torn, her eyes weary. "Good morning, sir," she said softly. "Good morning, Mama," Ade replied kindly. "What do you seek?" She hesitated. "I want to buy cloth for my daughter's wedding. But I cannot afford much." Ade studied her for a moment. He saw the desperation in her eyes, the pride of a mother who wanted her daughter to marry with dignity. Without a word, he reached for a fine Ankara fabric, folded it neatly, and handed it to her. "Take it," he said. "No payment needed. Consider it a gift." The widow's eyes widened in disbelief. "But sir," Ade smiled gently, "your daughter deserves joy on her day. Let her shine. That is all the payment I need." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she clasped the cloth to her chest. "God bless you, Ade. May your children never know shame." Word of Ade's kindness spread quickly. People spoke not only of his wealth, but of his generosity. He became known as a man who lifted others, not just himself. And with every act of kindness, his reputation grew stronger. As months passed, Ade began to extend his hand further. He hired young men from the village to work in his shop, teaching them trade skills. He sponsored apprenticeships for tailors who could not afford training. He even started contributing to community projects, helping repair the village well and donating fabrics for festivals. The villagers who once whispered mockery now spoke his name with respect. "Ade is a true son of the soil," they said. "He remembers his people." Even the chiefs took notice. At a community gathering, Chief Olalikan, the eldest of the council, praised him openly. "Ade," he declared, "you have shown us all what resilience means. You have turned shame into honor. You are an example for our children." The crowd erupted in applause, and Ade bowed his head humbly. At home, Mama Kike watched with quiet pride. Each evening, as she sat on her veranda, she marveled at how her son had transformed their lives. Once, she had cried herself to sleep, fearing she would die in poverty and disgrace. Now, she slept in comfort, her heart full of gratitude. "Ade, my son," she said one evening as they shared roasted maize, "you have given me joy in my old age. You have shown that hope can grow even from ashes. May your own children rise as you have risen." Ade's eyes softened. "Mama, everything I do for you. You carried me when I was weak. You prayed for me when I was far away. This joy is yours. She squeezed his hand gently. And it is also yours. Do not forget to live, my son. You have carried burdens for too long. Now carry joy as well. Meanwhile, Jide and Kunnal struggled with the weight of their past. Though they worked hard, the villagers' taunts stung. Look at the mighty brothers, working under the man they betrayed, people mocked. Some days they wanted to give up. But Ade never let them. Endure it, he told them. You sowed mockery, now you reap it. But if you keep working, one day you will reap respect. Redemption is not free, it is earned. His words cut deep, but they also gave hope. Slowly, the brothers began to stand taller, their shame turning into determination. One night, Ade sat outside under the stars, the cool breeze brushing his face. He thought of his journey, the bitter betrayal, the slow rise, the flourishing business. He realized something profound: wealth alone was not the true reward. The real reward was the ability to give, to lift others, to transform pain into blessing. He remembered his mother's words, swallow betrayal, plant new seeds. He had planted seeds of hard work, of honesty, of generosity, and now he was beginning to see the forest grow. The sun was just rising, casting a golden hue over the marketplace. Ade's factory bustled with activity, the hum of sewing machines, the rhythmic thud of weaving looms, and the voices of apprentices chanting greetings to their master. Ade Baba, they called, smiling as he walked past. He answered with a nod and a warm smile. He had built this factory from the ashes of betrayal, and now it stood as a symbol of determination and second chances. Bales of bright fabrics lined the storerooms, destined for cities across the nation. Traders arrived daily, carts and trucks rumbling with goods. Ade's name had become synonymous with quality and honesty. But perhaps the most striking sight in the factory was his younger brothers, Jide and Kunnal. Once careless, reckless, and wasteful, they now worked with bowed heads and quiet diligence. They carried heavy loads, swept floors, managed stock. No job was beneath them. Every stitch they made was a silent apology, every drop of sweat a confession of regret. The villagers never failed to notice. Is that not Kunnal? One market woman asked. Yes, the same Kunnal who wasted his brother's money, another replied with a smirk. Now look at him toiling in the very factory Ade built. Laughter followed, but not without a trace of pity. The mockery cut deep, but Jide and Kunnal endured. They knew they had earned their shame. What they had stolen with reckless hands, Ade had rebuilt with patient hands. And now, they bore the weight of that truth every day. Despite their past, Ade never turned them away. He treated them firmly, but not cruelly. Work hard, he told them. Not for me, but for yourselves. A man must rebuild his name when he has broken it. Sometimes they faltered, tempted to leave and escape the whispers. But Ade's unwavering presence anchored them. He did not rub their failures in their faces. Instead, he gave them the chance to rise again. That chance was worth more than gold. One evening, after a long day at the factory, Ade sat with his mother on the veranda of her new house. The cool harmattan breeze carried the sound of laughter from children playing nearby. Mama Kike watched her sons with weary but joyful eyes. My son, she said softly, you have done what many cannot. You turned bitterness into sweetness. Even your brothers, who betrayed you, now eat from your hand. Do you know what that means? Ade looked at her, his expression thoughtful. It means life is not about revenge, Mama. It is about teaching others through your example. If I had chased them away, they would have remained lost. But now they learn each day what it means to build, not to destroy. Mama Kike smiled, her wrinkles deepening with pride. Yes, my child, you have closed the circle. Betrayal was the beginning, but forgiveness is the end. The following week, the community held a festival in honor of hard-working sons of the land. Chiefs, elders, and villagers gathered under the shade of tall palm trees, drums beating, dancers swaying. Ade was called to the stage. Today, Chief Olalikin proclaimed, his voice booming, we honor a man who turned despair into prosperity, who built not only a business but also a legacy. Ade, son of Mama Kike, you are a true example of resilience. The crowd cheered. Women ululated, men clapped, children chanted his name. Ade stepped forward, humble as always, and bowed. I did not walk this journey alone, he said. I carried my mother's prayers, my community's faith, and my own belief that hope never dies. If betrayal can break a man, let forgiveness heal him. If poverty can humble a man, let hard work lift him. This is not just my story, it is our story. His words rang through the crowd like a bell. Later that night, Jide and Kunnal approached him quietly. The festival fire crackled nearby, their faces lit with shame and sincerity. Ade, Jide began, his voice trembling. We cannot undo the past. We stole from you, mocked your sacrifice, and left Mama in suffering. But you gave us another chance. You could have left us to perish, yet here we are, alive because of your mercy. We are sorry, brother. Kunnal added, his eyes moist. The people mock us, but that is nothing compared to the weight of our guilt. We vow never again to betray your trust. Ade placed a hand on each of their shoulders. You are my blood. Blood cannot be thrown away. You have made mistakes, but mistakes do not end a man's story. Only he can decide where it ends. Work hard, live right, and one day your names will shine again. For the first time in years, Jide and Kunnal felt hope stir within them. As time passed, the brothers proved themselves. They rose from mere laborers to trusted managers in Ade's growing business. The whispers of mockery faded, replaced with cautious respect. The villagers who once laughed now said, "See how they work." Perhaps they too are learning. Ade watched it all quietly. He had no desire to boast or seek vengeance. His satisfaction came from seeing lives transformed, starting with his mother, then his brothers, and finally the wider community. One night, as he sat alone under the starlit sky, Ade thought back to the day he had returned from abroad, full of hope yet crushed by betrayal. He remembered the pain of seeing his mother in that shack, the anger toward his brothers, the emptiness in his heart. And then he looked at his life, now his mother in comfort, his business thriving, his brothers redeemed. The circle was complete. Ade had not only survived betrayal, he had conquered it, and in doing so, he had proven a truth greater than wealth. That the greatest legacy a man can leave is not riches, but resilience, forgiveness, and hope. After 12 years abroad, Ade returned to Nigeria with hope, only to find betrayal. His brothers squandered his money, leaving their mother in poverty. Heartbroken but unbroken, he started a fabric business with the little he had left. Through grit, honesty, and resilience, his trade flourished, earning him wealth and respect. Ade built his mother a dignified home, helped the needy, and gave his disgraced brothers work in his factory. Though mocked, they learned humility under his guidance. Ade's story became a testament to perseverance, forgiveness, and the power to turn pain into prosperity and betrayal into redemption. Thank you for watching until the end of this video. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the betrayal and carelessness of his brothers. Please share your opinions in the comments section. If you want to discuss a story, let us know in the comments and we'll share it with our audience. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications to stay updated on our latest stories. Thank you.